Hello, and today this video will be having a look at the abundance of statuary and sculpture around the Alton Towers estate, and we'll mostly be looking at what still survives, but also a few bits that might have gone missing, and there'll be plenty of old archive photos and stuff like that. So if you're into this kind of thing, a bit of a deep dive into some parts of the history of the place, you might find it interesting. And to just give you a little bit of background, most of the sculpture here, especially in the gardens, would have been from the 1820s, and many were by Peter and William Hollins, who were apparently both resident at the Towers for a time whilst they carried out this work. Account books also show that the stonemasons Thomas Bailey and James Drummond were paid for making pedestals between 1820 and 1823. Many sculptures that were a bit worse for wear were then repaired during a programme of work in the 1990s. So, without further ado, let's start having a look around. So, first of all, I thought it would be quite fitting to have a look at these sculptures by the grand entrance. And these obviously are the Talbot hounds, which are synonymous with the Earls of Shrewsbury. And you've got one this side, and then you've got the other one down this side. And these are made of sandstone, and also the plinths that they stand on are made of sandstone. And on the plinths there, you can actually see that they're inscribed with the Latin motto of the Talbot family, Pres de Compler, which translates as ready to accomplish. And on the shield that the hounds are holding, you can see there's lions sculpted on those. And as we go down, there's an S for Shrewsbury down there. And it was Thomas Fradgley who was responsible for the building of the grand entrance, but it's thought that later on Pugin was apparently responsible for these Talbot hounds and other alterations through the house, obviously. And if we look at this picture from 1871, interestingly, you can see the Talbot hounds holding these sort of metal flagpoles with what appears to be an Earl's coronet on top. And the ones in her Ladyship's garden originally had those metal flagpoles, and I'm guessing that the sort of the flags with the S for Shrewsbury on were probably made of brass or something, so that's probably why they're not there anymore. Okay, so now we're going to move into Her Ladyship's gardens, and we'll have a look at the various statuary that we've got in here. So here we are in Her Ladyship's garden, and firstly we'll be having a look at these 4 cherub figures that run down the middle of the garden. And these 4 cherub figures represent the 4 seasons of the year. Nearest to the conservatory, the first one here sucks his thumb, and this suggests a new year. And then the second one here holds a wheat sheaf at his side, which represents summer. The third one along holds a garland of flowers which represents spring. And then the one at this end holds a bunch of grapes for autumn. And all of these cherubs are made from sandstone and stand on sandstone plinths. And on the one representing New Year, you can actually see that at some point the top part of the statue has been broken off and then later repaired. You can see by the cracks around the bottom. And then the statue nearest to the conservatory is David fighting with the lion, and is also made from sandstone. However, the plinth is actually made of marble, and if we look you can see that it's decorated with musical emblems such as trumpets and horns. So there's the lion at the bottom, with his mouth being held open by David. And you can see that unfortunately David's lost his head at some point, but then it's been reattached. So, in mythology, David is known to have fought a lion whilst working as a shepherd, before his later battle with Goliath. And this actually used to stand outside the Grand Conservatory in the main gardens, but it was brought here around the 1990s. And this was apparently by a member of the Nis family of sculptors from Antwerp in the 1700s. So this existing sculpture presumably would have been bought from an external source, instead of being originally produced for Alton Towers like most of the other statuary was. Okay, so here we have a picture of David and the lion from a stereo view from the late 1800s, and as you can see it's actually in the middle of her ladyship's garden here. And interestingly, the statues of the Four Seasons are not present at this point either. And then in this picture from the late 1980s or very early 90s, we can see David and the lion outside the Grand Conservatories in the gardens. It's just in the centre of the picture there. And then back to more modern times, back in her ladyship's garden, you can see David with his head missing here, before it was repaired later on. And this is from 2014. And just out of interest, I do like to keep an eye on how this little parterre or flower bed changes over the years. And this was from 2006, and as you can see it was from before the conservatory was restored. And then you have this one from more recently, where there's an S for Shrewsbury. And then we've got one from 2004, which is an aerial view. And interestingly, you can see in the bottom left hand corner someone entering the ruins from when you could actually get into the ruins for free flow from that area. And if you look on the exterior of the house, around the pugin rooms and other areas, you can actually see there's little sculptures in various places, and I'll get some photos up so we can have a close look at some of those. Yeah, so around the exterior of the pugin rooms and that general area, you have these various sort of gargoyles, and some of them look sort of lion-like in form. And then these lovely Talbot hounds with their flagpoles, these are on top of the banqueting hall. And then on the rear of the banqueting hall you've got these smaller Talbot hounds, one either side of the large window on the rear. That one's a bit damaged, as you can see. And then we have this fountain in the centre of her ladyship's garden, and this interestingly has lion's paws around the bottom. You can see a drainage hole for the water down there. But unfortunately this hasn't actually run with water for quite a long time. But I think I do have some footage and pictures, so I'll share those shortly of when it was running. And the top section that you can see here, this was lost at some point, so a new upper section was put in place in the 1990s. And I've been reliably informed that the pump for this fountain actually lies under these manhole covers at the side of the fountain. But unfortunately that has apparently stopped working, and it hasn't been fixed yet. So here's a bit of my old footage of it working from the early 2000s. And then at either end of the broad walk, which runs down the side of a ladyship's garden, we've got more talbot hounds, similar to the ones at the grand entrance. And these, along with the ones at the grand entrance, also used to hold iron rods with metal flags on the top. And you can actually see where those metal rods would have run up from here. And like I say, there's two at these of each end of this walk. And you can see there is some damage to these. Although it's not the best quality image, this one from 1898 does actually show those talbot hounds with their metal flagpoles still in place. And then you've got this one from the 1950s where that one's also still in place. And here are the talbot hounds at the other end of that walk. These are in a similar state to the ones down the bottom end. And then let's have a little walk around here and have a view of the end of the chapel. So, this is the Alton Towers chapel, and this is actually officially known as St Peter's Chapel. And the main statue that you can see at the top of the gable end, that is a statue depicting St Peter. And obviously I'll get some close-up pictures of that. And also on this end there's various smaller sculptures of faces and stuff like that. Like I say, I'll get some more pictures up. Okay, we'll quickly have a look at some sculptures inside the chapel now. So, here we can see the angel corbels inside the Alton Towers chapel, and these were made from cast iron at the Britannia Ironworks. And these date from around 1833 when the chapel was originally completed. They were originally painted to resemble wood, but later gilded and painted with various colours in the 1850s. Now I'm going to do a little section on the octagon, which is the taller building in the middle there. And originally you would have been able to walk from the house in that direction through the conservatory, and then steps would have led down from here into the octagon. But obviously it's been blocked off and bricked up for quite a while, as you can see. So yeah, we'll have a look at some sculptures inside the octagon now. So, these pictures of the inside of the octagon from the late 1800s show replicas in plaster and marble of the tombs of the first Earl of Shrewsbury and Sir Nicholas Fitz Herbert, and these were installed in 1841, and actually these are still in place inside the Hex attraction of the modern theme park. Pugin had commissioned the sculptor Samuel Firth to take plaster casts of these tombs and build replicas. The first Earl's tomb, who died in 1453, is at the church of St Alkmund in Shrewsbury, and the Fitz Herbert, who died in 1471, is at Norbury in the church of St Mary and St Barlock, around 6 miles from Alton. Okay, so I've actually decided to come to the town of Whitchurch in Shropshire to have a look at that tomb of the first Earl of Shrewsbury. And this is St Alkmund's Church, so we'll go and have a look. Okay, so I believe the tomb is down this way. And here it is, the original tomb of the first Earl of Shrewsbury. And down here you'll see something familiar. One of the old Talbot hounds, synonymous with the Talbot family. And here is the tomb. And I believe the bones are actually stored down here below this. And there's an inscription on this plate along here, and it's in Latin, but it actually translates as "Pray to God for the soul of the highly esteemed John Talbot of the county of Salop, Victor of Furnival and Verdun, Lord of Strange de Blackmere, Marshal of France, who died in battle near Bordeaux on the 7th of July 1453. And there's also another Talbot hound on the other side down here. And we see lots of those at Alton Towers. So, like we've said, it was Pugin who sent the sculptor Samuel Firth here to take a plaster cast of this for it to, for a replica to be made and put in the octagon. And at the back here there's another plaque explaining how this tomb was restored in the year 1874 by Adelaide, Countess Brownlow, daughter of the 18th Earl of Shrewsbury. And just on the way back out from the church, it's explained on this tablet on the wall here that when the first Earl died on the battlefield in France, it was his heart that was first brought back to England, and it was actually placed under this stone down here. So his heart's actually buried down there, and his bones are inside the tomb inside the church. And it was actually 50 years later that his bones were recovered from France and brought back. So, having seen the first Earl's tomb here at Whitchurch, we should really go to Norbury and have a look at the Fitz Herbert tomb there. So, let's go. So, here we are now in the village of Norbury, and this is the church of St Mary and St Barlock. And we've come to see the Fitz Herbert tomb, or the Fitz Herbert memorial, and hopefully it's going to be open. It's a lovely little place, a nice looking church. Okay, so here we are inside the church, and it's a gorgeous church. It's got an amazing large window at the end there. And as we enter this area, you've got two memorial tombs. And this is the Fitz Herbert one that's at Alton Towers. Well, a copy. And it's still there in the octagon at Alton Towers. And this is sort of one of the more intricate or more detailed of the two tombs that are there. So this is the Fitz Herbert tomb. And as I mentioned before, this is one of the ones that Lord Shrewsbury would have had, or Pugin would have had one of his people come and take a cast of, and then reproduce it for the Terrace. Let's have a little look around this side. And as you can see, there's all these delicately carved figures and stuff on this one. So there we are. Now, on a visit in 1837 by someone called Ebenezer Rhodes, he wrote that a bust of Napoleon and another of Cicero, both masterly works, are the first objects that present themselves on the right and left of the entrance from the octagon. So, those two statues, or busts, they were more than likely standing on these two pedestals around 200 years ago. Now, if we walk through this vestibule of the conservatory, the octagon entrance would have been on our left. And then this smaller garden down here, this is known as the Star Garden. And this is named after that fountain down there. Now, the top part of this fountain had become lost at some point, but in the 1990s, the discovery of a drawing in the Hardman Archive in Birmingham enabled the Towers workshop to recreate the metalwork head of the fountain. Now, I've never seen this fountain actually working, but describing this garden in around 1850, William Adam explained that in the centre there is a fountain, the water being thrown through the leaves and petals of a cast iron lily. He also described that there were parterres and roses in this section, but it's pretty plain now apart from the fountain. As I just alluded to, this fountain was rebuilt in around 1999 to the original design, but apparently it's still awaiting a supply of water and power. And here we can see a few more pictures of the restored fountain in the Star Garden, a bit more close up. Okay, now we're going to go down into the gardens where there's a lot more sculpture and statuary. So, as you first enter the gardens underneath the white bridge there, either side there's a niche, one on the left there, and then as we continue over here, there's another this side. An early account of the estate suggests that these busts were of Venus and Adonis. Now, if this is a surviving bust here, then that must mean that this one's Venus, because this is a female. You can see there's a little bit of damage to the nose and stuff. But then on the other side, this one's been missing for quite a while. I don't know if I can recall ever seeing one in this part. As you can see, that's been broken off at some point. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as I'm back home and I'm looking through some old video footage from 2006, I find a very short clip of the bust from the other side, the one that's now been removed or broken off. So if the one from the first side is Venus, then that would make this one Adonis on this side. But like I say, this one's gone now, as you could see in the last clip. So yeah, there's not really a lot more to say about those, because there's not much documentary evidence. So we'll move on to the next little bit. As most of you will know, this is the Karadzic monument. Now, the bust of the 15th Earl featured here is made of sandstone, and it's been attributed to William Hollins. The conventional wisdom has been that this was by Peter Hollins, but further research actually suggests that it was probably by his father William. An earlier bust by Thomas Campbell was apparently moved to the Gothic Prospect Tower before being moved again into the octagon in the house and then replaced with this one. The monument dates to around 1830 and was commissioned by the 16th Earl as a memorial to the 15th Earl who had laid out the gardens. And the monument is part stone and part cast iron produced by the Britannia Foundry in Derby. Now if we just move down slightly from the Karadzic monument, you'll see this figure towards the top of the rock garden. And I don't think he is now, but at one point I'm sure he was seemed to be playing a flute or some kind of panpipes or something. As you can see, the water used to run down here from the top of the rock garden all the way down into the mock canal at the bottom. And I'll try and get some better views of this from the front. And with him playing a flute or some other kind of instrument, it would have evoked thoughts of nice relaxing music spreading out down through the gardens. A bit like the harpist used to do who lived in the Swiss cottage. So, if we move down into the rock gardens, you'll come across the stepping stones here. And if we turn around, you'll be able to see the figure up there. It is a little distance away, so obviously I'll get some photos and stuff for a close-up. Okay, so this is a bit more of a close-up of the guy in the rock garden who used to play flute or panpipes or something like that. And just out of interest, in a few seconds I'm going to play some of my old footage of the rock garden from the early 2000s, and you'll be able to see how well the water used to flow down that section. And as you'll have heard me mention before, this is horribly overgrown at the moment, the rock garden. It's really one of the things that they could do with sorting out at some point. But obviously not enough manpower to get it all done due to budgets, etc. As is the way nowadays. And now we'll move down into the Dutch garden, and there's quite a bit to see down here actually. So the first thing you'll see is these 4 cherubs running along the outside of the garden. 2 there, and then there's 1 either side. And with the Catholic religion being so important to the Talbot family, these 4 cherubs represented the 4 continents, which were a reminder of the worldwide spread of Catholicism. So firstly, from the left-hand side, we have Europe, who wears a full-length cloak and Roman-style sandals with an eagle at his feet. And all these statues here are made of sandstone. And as you can see, his arm's a bit damaged and in need of repair. And if you look at this one, actually, interestingly, his manhood appears to have been removed. And I'll talk about that a little bit in another section. Then we have Africa, seen here leaning on a cornucopia and his foot on a tortoise. And a cornucopia, seen here, also known as a horn of plenty, is a symbol of abundance and nourishment and can usually be seen with fruit and veg and other produce, but not in this case. And then there's this one, representing America, probably, featuring a feathered headdress and skirt, leaning on a wheat sheaf and has a lizard on his right arm. And as you can see, there's some damage to the lizard. And then last of all, we have Asia, with his turban and standing on a large shell. And he's also missing his manhood and one of his arms. And then just inside the Dutch garden, you've got this stone base here, which would have been for a sundial. And I'll get some pictures up of when that was in place. And then in the middle of the garden, we have Prometheus and the eagle on its rocky base. And to explain this sculpture here, in Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind, and for this he was punished by Jupiter by being chained to a rock where an eagle came every day and fed on his liver, which you can pretty much see here. Here's the eagle at the back, and there's Prometheus, and the eagle's appearing to feed on him. And there he is on his rock. And as you can probably see, his hands appear to be bound here. And then he's just turning round to apparently see the eagle who's just arrived to attack him. And then just beyond Prometheus and the eagle, we have the lion fountain, not to be confused with the fountain with the lion's feet in her ladyship's garden. And actually the lion seen here is a modern substitute. And the original lion was sold in 1924, and is now sited outside the offices of Staffordshire Moorlands District Council in Leek. So, shall we go and have a look at that? So, here we are in Leek, and we're going to find that lion that was originally at Alton Towers, and I believe this is the council house, or one of them, in Leek, Staffordshire Moorlands Council. And just around this corner here, you'll see that this is the original lion from the Dutch garden at Alton Towers. Here we go. And I don't think it would have been painted white originally, obviously. There we go, it's a bit more of a close-up. So yeah, this lion's been on his travels, and this is where he's resting at the moment. Just watching over the town of Leek and all the cars that pass every day. There we go, Staffordshire Moorlands. Alright then, so let's get back to it at Alton Towers. And that original lion was apparently purchased by the town of Leek from one of the sales at the Towers, and it was first placed in a local park in Leek actually, before being placed in its current spot. And the original lion was made from code stone, and that would have been produced by the Code Factory in Lambeth. And the statue down in the bath fountain at the Refuge, that's also made of code stone. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as we move on down there later. And in the middle of the actual fountain there, the stone, what appear to be shells on the ledge, would formerly have caused the water to run downwards in various different streams instead of one wall of water. And I'll show some pics of that shortly. But as you can see, it's not in great condition at the moment. That used to be a full ledge of those sort of stone shells. And incidentally, at one point, for part of the 20th century, two other lions actually stood at the entrance to the Dutch garden. And apparently they weren't part of the original garden scheme. But obviously they're gone now, and I think they moved to the hotel, so a bit later on I'm going to go and have a look, see if I can find those lions at the hotel, as well as some other statuary or sculpture over there. Alright, so we'll just look at some additional old pictures of the Dutch garden now. And as you can see here, those are those two extra lions that I mentioned that were at the entrance to the Dutch garden for a part of the 20th century. But now, as I mentioned, these seem to have been moved to the Alton Towers Hotel when that was built. And not a lot of people are aware of this, but between the original large lion on the fountain that's now in Leek and the one that's currently in place now, there was this sort of intermediate lion or lioness that stood there during sort of the middle of the 20th century. And the pictures aren't the best, but it does show it. Then there's this one from the late 1800s showing the original lion and the fountain working. And then this one from 1898, just showing the general area inside the Dutch garden with the original lion again. And then another one showing the Dutch garden, and you can actually see the Orangery fountain spurting up from behind. And then this one's mine from 2012 when it was still sort of working. You'll just be able to see. And then this one again is from 1898, and this shows the bottom half of the Dutch garden. And then you can also see the ribbon borders leading up to the Karadzic monument. So now we're just going to leave the Dutch garden and move on up to the next terrace where the Orangery is up there. Okay, so we're up on the next level now. This is obviously the Orangery, the smaller of the two glass houses in this part of the gardens. And just in front of the Orangery we have what was the Orangery fountain. Obviously not currently in use. And this once featured a statue of a cherub holding a lily pad. And I should have some pictures somewhere, so I'll put them up in a minute. But this is not currently working due to a leak, and apparently it still needs to be investigated. And the watercourse that operates down here, that also affects the lion cascade that we've just looked at, or the lion fountain. So that explains why that's no longer working as well. Now, my research tells me that the central lead figure and fountain had been removed for maintenance around the year 2000, but it's still yet to make a reappearance. So whether that's lost or just in storage, I'm not sure. Okay, so now we'll have a quick look at a few older pictures of the Orangery fountain. So first of all, we've got this one from the early 1900s, and you can see that the water pressure must have been quite good at this point. And then later on in 1966, and you can see the statue of the cherub holding up a lily pad. Then we've got a couple from around 2011 where the statue is obviously gone missing, and there's this strange base turned up. And then another one a couple of years after that where you can see it is actually still functioning. So moving on slightly, down by the Grand Conservatory, we have an interesting little vase down here. This stone vase right over here, and you probably walk past it every time and not really notice it. And this is actually a small copy of something called the Warwick vase. And the Warwick vase is an ancient Roman marble vase that was discovered at Hadrian's Villa in Tivoli in around 1771. And so following that discovery, that vase became quite famous, and various sort of landed estates decided to get their own copies. And I've been to other country estates, and I've seen 2 or 3 at different country estates. So obviously at some point Alton Towers decided to get their own little copy. So this is probably around 200 years old, this is. And then interestingly, just a small walk away at these steps here, what they appear to have done as well is produced absolutely loads of cast iron copies. And because it's cast iron, you can see that the details have survived much better on these. And there's quite a few of these in the gardens. And on this one, well, on all of these, you can see that the handles still survive. Whereas, if we move down to the stone version, which is probably older than those cast iron ones, you can see that the handles have broke off the side here. So the handles would have come out of the side of there. And that's the same on both sides. You can see the little head of the people there. And then again, you can see the little heads. And I'll put up a picture of the original Warwick vase so that you can see that they're the same. But obviously these are just later copies. Okay then, moving on slightly. We'll go down here. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the second terrace down from the Grand Conservatories. And we'll be having a look along the wall down here. Okay, so halfway along here you'll see a large niche in the wall. And this apparently was the site of a statue called the Ceres statue. I think it's pronounced Ceres anyway. So, after a visit in around 1850 by William Adam, he wrote that he was shown in an ivied niche a beautiful full-size figure of Ceres with a bouquet of corn ears in her right hand and a wreath of corn round her brow. And that was in a section of his write-up around this sort of area of the gardens. And I actually have an old stereo view from the 1800s showing this statue, which appears to be in this niche. So obviously I'll put that on for you to have a look at. And this looks to be the only niche of a fitting size in this area. So this is almost certainly where that statue stood for many years. And I also have another stereo view from the 1800s here, which also shows the statue in its niche. And then in this other image from the 1800s, you can see that white figure in the bottom left hand corner, which appears to be Ceres in the correct place 2 terraces down from the Grand Conservatories. So I think that's pretty conclusive that that's where that statue was. Yeah, so obviously that statue of Ceres stood here at one point, but it's obviously gone missing at some point between then and now. So God knows where that's gone. And then I've now moved to the terrace just above that one. And there should be another statue down here. Okay, so around here we have another statue of a female. But unfortunately I don't really have much information about this one. But as it happened, a bit later on in the day when I was filming this, I was down by the canal and there was a missing statue down there, so I wondered if it could have been moved from down there, but I'm not sure, I'm just guessing really. Okay then, so let's move on. Right, so we're now near the yew arches. Have a quick look in there. But we're not here to see the yew arches, obviously. What we're here to see is this terrace down here. So this terrace here, below the yews, is called Lady Mary's Terrace. And this terrace takes its name from Lady Mary Talbot, the daughter of the 16th Earl. And she was the one who married the Italian Prince Philip Andrew Doria, from who the Doria apartments in the house take their name. And I'll walk along because this terrace stretches beyond these bushes as well. Pretty much to the wall at the end down there. And we're obviously going to be talking about Statuary that was here, and I think there's one currently out at the moment down the other end. So just before I talk about this terrace, just on the top part of the terrace, just on this ridge, let's have a look at this statuary first. So this is known as the infant Bacchus and goat. And as you can see, the infant Bacchus is lying on the back of a goat. And there's a little bit of damage to this one. The foot seems to be missing there. That's broke off at some point. And we can see that Bacchus has got his hand in the mouth of the goat. Now apparently Earl John was not a big fan of the indelicate character of some of the subjects in the gardens, i.e. Ones that were sort of showing the manhood and whatever. And as you can see here, Bacchus, he appears to have had his manhood removed. And apparently not only did he sort of remove some parts of the statuary, he actually sold some of them just to get rid of them because he didn't like the way they looked. Okay, so leaving Bacchus and his goat, down onto Lady Mary's Terrace, or this side of it anyway, we can see that there's one statue remaining at the moment. So there would have been two this side, so you got the one that's still remains here. He appears to be holding a garland of flowers, or grapes or something like that. I think it's flowers. But then if we move along, you can see that this one's been removed. See, all these have probably been removed due to vandalism. You got that one that used to look like that one over there, obviously with a different statue. And then moving on to the other side, we would have had two more statues. So there's the base for one of them. Obviously very old. These are all original bases. And then further along, you can see this one's not been in place for a long time. Hardly any sign of anything left there. You can just see a bit of stone at the bottom of the grass. And then at the end of the terrace, You got this small shell-like waterwork with a slight dribble coming out of it at the moment. And that's where we are at the minute. Just over the fence you've got the Refuge. And apparently these 4 statues across Lady Mary's Terrace, these also were supposed to represent the 4 seasons of the year. Now I've spoke to the gardeners, and apparently some, if not all of these statues are actually still in storage. They're keeping them safe because they keep being vandalised. So hopefully at some point they might come back. And what I'll do now is I'm going to put up some really old pictures and talk through them a little bit, because also, as well as the statuary down here, there are also some lovely parterres and stuff. So yeah, we'll go and do that. So here we have some images from the late 1800s, and you can see the 4 white statues in place and the intricate designs of the parterres. And in the 1850s, Edward Advino Brooke wrote that it was the famous gardener William Nesfield who had designed this terrace. And then here in the early 1900s you can see that the parterre is getting a bit more simplistic, but the statues are still in place. And then in these pictures from 2015, this is the one that's still in place today, but this looks freshly restored in this picture. Amazingly, at this point, all 4 of the statues were still standing in place. But as we've just seen not too long ago, there's only 1 standing at the moment in 2025. These are the 2 statues on the far side of the terrace, near to that little shell-like water feature. Then we have a picture of Bacchus and the goat again here, probably from around the mid-1900s, and for some reason he'd been placed outside the Grand Conservatory for a while. Now at the end of the Yew Walk, where the Golden Gates used to be, on top of these gate piers, you can see that there are a pair of terracotta lions. I'm not sure exactly when these were put in, but I'm pretty sure that they weren't original to the original garden scheme in the early 1800s. And I'll put some close-up pictures up of those. Okay, so let's move on down a terrace to Le Refuge. Okay, so down at Le Refuge we have what is known as the Infant Triton Fountain, also known as the Bath Fountain. And I can't get too close up because it's fenced off nowadays for the safety of the statue, basically, because it has been vandalised a few times over the years. So the Infant Triton Fountain sits in the middle of this oval shaped cold bath. The base of the sculpture is dated 1813 and has the Code and Sealy inscription on it, and the original statue was in place by 1819. So we know that the sculpture is made from code stone through the inscription, and code stone is an artificial stone developed in the 18th century by Eleanor Code, and it was prized for its ability to be finely detailed and its resistance to weathering. Now if you travel around to quite a few heritage sites, you can see code stone used in many country house gardens and in other places. And the original code workshop was down in Lambeth in London, and that's spelt C-O-A-D-E. As alluded to by the name of it, the sculpture is of an infant Triton with cherub-like features holding a conch shell from his mouth in which water used to spout. In Greek mythology, Tritons were sea gods with tails of a fish instead of legs, and the conch shell was said to have been used as a trumpet to beckon the raising or calming of the seas. The fountain was restored in the 1990s by Cliveden Conservation, but since then it was vandalised again, so had to be removed and once again repaired. As we can see, it sits in a cold bath, and cold baths were common in gardens in the 18th century, when they were considered to be an effective care for a wide range of diseases and conditions. The cold bath here at Alton Towers is obviously a slightly later example, going into the 19th century. The cold bath and bathhouse here were said to be the work of Peter Ford in 1812. And if you look in other places, there were particularly decorative bath buildings at Packwood House, Rest Park and Corsham Court. And I'll just put up a few more pictures and stuff, just out of interest. Alright then, so in the late 1800s in this picture, you can see that at this point there was some weird planting going on around the outside of the bath where the fountain stands. And interestingly, if you look in the little niche to the very right, just inside the bathhouse, you can see that there's a little statuette inside there that's missing nowadays. And then there's this one I've got from around the 1920s probably, and just look at how high the water's spurting in this one. There's a lot of water pressure there. And then in this one, probably around late 60s or early 70s, there's a different bust or statue in the doorway to Le Refuge there. And then coming up to 2014, you can see that the fountain's in a derelict state at this point. And also from 2014, this is where you can see the inscription Code and Sealy across the top, and then Lambeth 1813 underneath. And then just a year later in 2015 you could see that the fountain has been totally restored and replaced. And then this footage is from 2006, and this shows a few views of the fountain actually working, but with the statue not in place on the top. And then literally next door to the Refuge we have the Colonnade of the Muses. And the statues of the Muses placed along the top of the colonnade were almost certainly the work of Peter Hollins. In Greek mythology, the Muses were minor deities who were thought to inspire creativity and artistry. Apollo, the only male up there, fifth from the end there, was believed to inspire prophecy, singing and music. Now it's actually possible to name each one. So I'll just get some pictures up and I'll do that. And I'll start from left to right. Okay, so first we have Melpomene, the muse of tragedy. And then there's Terpsichore, the muse of dancing. And then following that there's Calliope, the muse of epic poetry and singing. And then Urania, the muse of astronomy. And this is Clio, the muse of history. And then this is Apollo. And then this is Polyhymnia, the muse of hymns and pantomime. And then Euterpe, the muse of lyrical poetry. And the ninth one is Erato, the muse of love poetry. And finally, Thalia, the muse of comedy. It's believed that the statues were originally in the house conservatory before later being moved here. And during the 1940s, the statues appear to have been put into storage, but when they were returned to the gardens, they seem to have been put in various places and not on the colonnade here. For example, you can see these statues in these pictures, probably from the 1950s and 1960s, on the scalloped wall which leads up towards the Karadzic monument. In the 1990s, the statues were restored and moved back to their rightful place on the colonnade. Apparently, 3 of the Muses had actually lost their heads before they were restored. After the original sculpture of Apollo was lost, a new one was made, and this was produced by the master carver Conrad Lindley Thompson, who has also worked on films such as Star Wars, amongst others. And just in front of the colonnade, we've got this nice sundial. It's still in place. And looking at this picture from the mid 1800s, you can see the general area. And then this must be from the mid 1900s, when the statues were elsewhere in the gardens. As you can see, they're missing from the top of the colonnade there. And then this is an article from, I think, the 1990s, when the Greek god Apollo had been replaced. And here there's a few more images of the colonnade from different angles. And moving down another level, if we go past the bandstand, we will come to the mock canal and a few more statues. Oh god, this is very overgrown now down here. So there you can see we've got one statue on the other side of the canal. And then as we move further down, we have a second, and then a third one along there. And there was, I believe, another one further down towards the iron bridge that you can't actually see from here anymore. But yeah, I think the plinth is hidden in that undergrowth somewhere there. And these three are actually in quite a poor condition. They all seem to be missing arms, both arms, one arm or something. They're just generally not in very good condition. And I'll obviously put some close-up photos on for you so you can have a look. And these statues down here, these were also probably by Peter and William Hollins during their time here. But I wonder where that fourth statue's gone. Is it in the canal at the bottom? Or I was actually thinking, could the fourth one be the one on that level below the Grand Conservatory that we saw earlier? Who knows? Let's have a little look at them from the side. Try not to fall in the canal. And this one furthest along used to have an eagle at her feet, which is got its head broken off at the moment. And this picture is one that I took at one of the Garden Lights events from several years ago. And obviously it shows the canal and the statues. And that event was really good actually. And moving further up the gardens, we have the screw fountain. So this dates back to the early 1820s, and again this has been attributed to the sculptor William Hollins, and obviously it takes its name from the spiral nature of the design. And it's obviously not working at the moment, but I will put up some pictures and video of it in action. And as we can see down here, you can actually see the old pipework that carries the water further down the valley and stuff, just going through the pool at the bottom of it there. And what's good this year actually, they've actually constructed a new bridge and railings for it. And it's actually quite tasteful. I'm a fan. Now the screw fountain isn't actually working at the moment anymore, so let's enjoy some videos from times gone by, from several years ago and many more, of it actually working. And moving slightly further up, the Gothic Prospect Tower is on top of that rock, but you can't see it. The rock is called Thompson's Rock. That's the Bear Cave there. And then just moving slightly further along, there's an old carving in the rock down here. And this was a carving of a serpent, and it originally had glass eyes and an iron tongue sticking out. And if you look closely, you can just about see signs of the scales there on the side of whatever this serpent was. And obviously the tongue would have stuck out across here, and it would have had glass eyes. I suppose that's been worn down quite a bit over the years as well. And I don't know if that would have continued a bit further on under that mound. Maybe it's been covered over the years, or maybe it was just a head sticking out all the time. Quite possibly. And this again has been attributed to William or Peter Hollins, who were doing a lot of the work in the early 1820s. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave the gardens now, and we're going to go over to the hotel and have a look. So here we are at the hotel, and this sculpture and fountain dates back to the opening of the hotel in the 1990s. And this fountain, depicting a magical flying car, is said to have been somewhat inspired by the old film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It sits in an 8-metre wide pool and incorporates parts of a plane, train, golf clubs, a camera, and also things like a ship and a cannon. And down at the entrance to the hotel, we have 8 of these sandstone chess figures. And these, along with the fountain, were apparently the work of Peter Price, who was a local artist. And these also date back to the opening of the hotel. And interestingly, the chess pieces actually represent people who were involved in the construction of the hotel, including the architect and the hotel manager at the time. Now, I'm not sure which one's which, obviously, but I'll have a quick look at some of them. Their features have actually been used and transformed into caricatures that are similar to gargoyles that you'd see on Gothic cathedrals and such like. And there are 2 groups of 4 either side of the entrance. And when I was at the Dutch Garden earlier, do you remember that I mentioned that there were 2 lions temporarily at the entrance of that garden for a while? Well, these are the ones that got moved from there, just in the towards the lobby of the hotel. There's one. And then there's the other one. So these have moved around a little bit. so obviously the bits and pieces down at the hotel, they're very modern compared to the stuff in the country house estate. But I thought it was worth looking at anyway. And while we were on the subject of the hotel, does anyone remember this from the Woodland Walk? This was a wooden carving of some type of dragon or serpent, and this picture was taken in 2006, and I think in the years following that I sort of slowly watched it biodegrade until it was pretty much nothing after that. And on the rarely trodden paths of the outer reaches of the gardens, you get some weird and wonderful rock structures, like this, the Cuckoo Arbour, with sort of hieroglyphics carved into stones. And then you even get things like this face carved out of the stone. And then maybe a bench carved out of the stone also. And it's quite likely that these things were the work of William Hollins and his son Peter, who we've already mentioned, who were both resident at Alton during the time when the gardens and walks were laid out. Okay, so I think we've covered everything that we realistically can. So that brings us to the end of the video. So well done if you managed to sit through all of that. And I do really appreciate you watching my video, and hopefully you found some things of interest in there. And I think it's fitting to end with an image of the man who created the gardens in the first place, Charles Talbot, the 15th Earl of Shrewsbury.